Hi and welcome to a tutorial on chords. I'm going to start by just breaking it right down, focusing on one chord at a time. So we're going to focus on the chord of C today, and we're going to use that within the C scale. So the C scale uses all of the white notes on your keyboard. We don't look at any of the black notes yet, because they will come in later for adding sevenths and things like that. You'll hear a lot of numbers as well, and numbers play a big part when you're thinking about chords, especially with the piano, because you're thinking about numbers as in relation to notes. So, if we're thinking about the C scale, those are our notes within the C scale. And of course they go up and down all over the keyboard because the keyboard does not stop within that scale. The notes continue, they're replicated throughout the rest of the keyboard. For example, although I played within these notes, the note of D, which is the second note, is also up here. And you can see the pattern continues with our keyboard. So essentially what you could do with the keyboard is pick this part up and move it up or down, and it would stay the same. The notes would stay the same, they'd just be higher or lower octaves. They'd sound higher or they'd sound lower. But for today, we're going to start and stay in this kind of range here, just for ease's sake. So once you've learnt this, you can pick it up and put it all over the keyboard wherever you want. So let's learn about the C chord. So the C chord, for that you're going to need to find the note C. There it is. It's just one step down from these two black notes here. Okay, same for up here. You just find these two black notes there, and there's the C. So once you've found the C, I want you to think of that as the root note, as that is the note of the chord that we want to make. So we want to make a C chord, so we find the C note. There it is. Now this is where our numbers come into it. If we think about our scale, that's our scale. And we need to think about them in four types of numbers. So this is the root note, or the C. And then we're going to use, for our chord, we're going to build a basic triad of the first note, the third note, and the fifth note. So if this is the first note, this is the second note, this is the third note, which is E. And then we need not the fourth, but the fifth, which is G. So for any triad we're building, starting in the root inversion, we're going to use the root note, we're going to use the third note, and we're going to use the fifth note. And there's our beautiful major chord. So going into a bit more detail about first, third, and fifth notes, we can see that although we might count these, they're not in our scale, they're not in our C scale, so they're out. We don't need them at the moment. We don't think about them at the moment. We think about our root note, which is C, we think about our third, which is the E, and then we think about our fifth, which is the G. Played together makes a beautiful sound, a beautiful major sound. Minor would sound dark and dingy and horrible. So this first, third, and fifth concept, we can move around the keyboard. As long as we're using the same notes, C, E, and G, we can use them in different inversions, and they still make the same kind of sound using the same notes. So for example, we're going to move this up now and we're going to go to our first inversion. So first inversion uses the third note as our starting note, and we find the next note in the scale, which is our fifth, and we find, which is missing, the root note, which is C. So there we can play our C chord again, but we can play it in a different inversion. It makes the same or similar sound. It's the same chord, but just in a different place on the keyboard. And finally, we can learn our second inversion. Now the second inversion, we don't start on the C because we've done that already. We don't start on the E because we've done that already. We're going to start on the G. And the next note to find after the G, we don't use this note, we don't use this note, it's the C. And so if we've done G and C, the only one left would be the E. So there we go, another C chord, but in a different position. So those three inversions, root, first, and second, are the only three inversions that you'll need when playing the C chord across the keyboard. So we can put that anywhere on the keyboard that we like and it will still make the same noise or the same sound, same chords that you are aiming to play. It will just be a higher or lower pitch. So for example, you won't be able to see this, but I'll play the chord in the root inversion throughout the keyboard. So it made the same sound, but it didn't matter where I put those notes as long as they were in the same pattern. If you're feeling a bit more adventurous and you feel like you're really confident using those inversions of the chord C, and again with any chord that you learn it stays the same, you can start mucking around with it and doing different patterns. So for example, I know that I want to play in a band using only a C chord. It's a pretty boring band, just using C, but I can start to muck around with the chords. If I've got a rhythm in my head, I know that I'm going to be using the C, the E and the G, so I can start thinking about different patterns that I can play. So I can just, on the beat, I might choose to go. So that you can then move it around and start to play different rhythms. You can also just take some of the notes off, as long as you're playing that pattern. Still makes sense, it's still the same chord. And it's the same for the different inversions as well. So this is in the first inversion. And then the second inversion. So you can play around with it and see where you end up depending on how much practice you've had and how much you understand it. So now I'd like to think you've become a master of the C chord and you can put it wherever you like on the keyboard and know all your inversions and be able to place it in different areas on the keyboard. So next time we're going to be learning about the F chord and doing the same concept as we did in the C chord, using the root, the third and the fifth, and moving that up and down in different inversions. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Please let me know how you got on, and I hope to see you again next time when we'll be covering F. See you later.